Good evening, and welcome to this forum for the City of Ferndale election. Today is September 18, 2023. This forum will be featuring the two candidates who have filed for mayor, 2-year term, vote for one, and three candidates who have filed for city council, a 4-year term, vote for two. The format for this evening is as follows. The mayoral candidates will be featured first until about 7:45. After a short break, candidates will be seated. The council candidates will be seated, and we will continue with the council candidate forum. The League of Women Voters, Oakland area, is the sponsor of this forum. I am Jerry Burden, a member of the League of Women Voters. I am not a resident of the city of Ferndale. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, national, nonpartisan political organization. Our members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues that benefit all of our communities. As a League of Women Voters member, I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership role such as this that has great impact on local, state, and national issues. If you're interested in learning how you can become a member of the League of Women Voters, I encourage you to pick up some of our information at the forum or also visit our website, lwvoa.org. The League of Women Voters did not endorse any candidate or political party. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and the sponsor takes no responsibility. The format for this forum has been established by the League of Women Voters. We ask the audience to remain silent during the forum. Please turn off all cell phones. We ask that the candidates answer the question with their views only and not interrupt another candidate. The questions are asked of all candidates. We do not single out any candidate. The presentation is copyrighted 2023 by the League of Women Voters. All rights are reserved. All candidates will be answering questions submitted by the audience, screened for duplication and appropriateness, by Christine Allen, Terry Benjamin, and Joy Shanklin. Pages, Mike Allen, and Maureen Christensen will be circulating with paper and pencils, so if you want to write a question, just raise your hand. They'll bring you cards and pencils to write the questions. Please turn your questions into the pages. The format is as follows. All candidates will be given 1 minute for opening statement in alphabetical order. Closing statement will be 1 minute in reverse order. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question unless the time is extended by the moderator. All candidates will be allowed equal time to answer questions. Our timer, Belinda Fries, is sitting in the front. She will indicate when 30 seconds and when time to stop. Our candidates for mayor are Mr. Sean Hurley and Ms. Raylon Leaks May. We will begin our opening statements with Mr. Hurley. Mr. Hurley.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, and all of those who identify differently, I want to thank you for being here today. I understand the importance of an election, even at the most local levels. And I want to also thank the Women's League for hosting this as well, too. I'd like to just point out to everyone here that I'm aware of the situations and what I am going against to be your next mayor of Ferndale. I am new, I am young, I have not the experience, but I have a lot of business professional experience that will be able to help me and help all of us together to create a balanced budget that will not only supply us with additional resources to support the things that you all want, but also to benefit all of the other local municipalities that we currently support. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. May.
Yes. So I've served in this community for over 30 years, and I've had the pleasure of building relationships with many of the people that I see in the audience. I've served as your councilwoman for the last 8 years. I've raised my children here. I've served on multiple boards and commissions, and I really love this community. I serve this community, it's a labor of love. And I just want to say that I know that experience matters, thoughtful decision-making matters. I have a history of both. And I really want to see our progressive little community, our quaint community, move forward. I am a dedicated servant. I've served on the school board for 3 years, city council 8, and I am looking to be your next mayor. I'm looking to bring my experience, my thoughtfulness, my leadership to you, and I ask for your support on November 7th for your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now begin the questioning part of the forum. And our first question will start with Mr. Hurley. Why have DPW directors left the job? What are the current concerns of the DPW that you have, and how would you correct them?
Thank you for that question. I think overall, the reason that not only just the DPW, but the reasons that we fight with every single resource that we have here is because we are not allocating enough money to our budget to be able to support them. And that is one of the key elements of bringing me into this race. I am able, and I have experience for the past 12 years of balancing budgets, fixing projects, and being a productive member of society as well. What I'd like to also add in here is, overall, I think the main issues are a discomfort and an unreliability that people feel within our city. We don't support our public workers. We do not do enough for them. However, 40%, 35% of our budget is spent towards them. Where is this money going? And what we need is someone who is able to balance a budget, create and reallocate our finances to be able to support them, and we will not have these issues going forward.
Thank you. Ms. May.
Can you repeat the entire question, please?
In it back here. With the loss of DPW workers, what are the concerns of the DPW and what you would do to solve those problems?
I will tell you that DPW, in addition to other services, are some of the hardest working members in this community. And I will tell you that we attract some of the greatest talent in this community. But you know what? After a while, and after learning so much on the job, there are times when you want to move on to new endeavors. I can say as a council member that I've seen those letters when individuals resign and they have not one bad thing to say about the city. I know that our DPW workers know that we support them. I am definitely a supporter of our city services. I'm a resident and I live here and I love the services just like you do. And I will tell you that this is a matter of, for the most part, moving on to new endeavors, learning new experiences, wanting to take on new roles, because you've given something, you've given to the city. I am so appreciative of the people that have come and have gone. But as they do go, I wish them well, because they've given so much to us.
May I have a rebuttal on that question?
No. You can use your time and another question to add to.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
Second question, we'll start with Ms. May. As everyone knows, there's a large number of marijuana dispensaries in Ferndale. Are you concerned about the bubble, and what would you do to diversify Ferndale's economy if elected?
Well, I think that, yes, we do have quite a few number of dispensaries, and those dispensaries serve a purpose for those who need them. I think that we need to start expanding our structures, our business establishments. We need to start focusing on more of what the community needs. And to me, that is more affordable housing, barrier-free housing, focusing on safety, focusing on our seniors and services, focusing on our community, focusing on our facilities. So yes, we do have dispensaries, but I'm more focused on what the community needs and what we can do to serve our community better. I work at the Area Agency on Aging, and I serve seniors and adults with disabilities, so I know barrier-free and affordable and accessible housing is something that's important to this community and something I plan to move forward. with my current council and former council.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley.
Can you please repeat the question, sir?
As you know, there are a large number of marijuana dispensaries in Ferndale. Are you concerned about the bubble, and what would you do to diversify Ferndale's economy if elected?
Thank you for that question. I think overall what we need to really look at is how many liquor stores do we have in the city? I don't consider alcohol to be any different than marijuana. And if we're going... Can I restart my time, please? I
Certainly.
got distracted there. Thank you.
She's the timer.
Thank you, Linda. So, my overall thoughts on the marijuana dispensaries and everything that we have going on here is that we have an equal, if not more, liquor stores in this town. What is more dangerous than marijuana? Alcohol. And if we keep having these conversations regarding marijuana, and if it's too condensed and if we have too many going on, this is additional revenue that we can bring in. Since our current administration is willing to give out millions of dollars of subsidies for apartment buildings over on the east side, if we're willing to do all of this, we need money. And that's something that is necessary for us to do. Is weed a bad thing? Absolutely not. Whatever you choose to do at your own time is fine. If I want to diversify this place, I would definitely say that we have to reinvigorate our downtown area and create more opportunities in that area versus marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Hurley. We need a community center. How will you facilitate this item?
Thank you for that question. I do actually believe that the current administration here has already received a $500,000 grant for a community center. I have walked the streets and I understand the need and want for a community center, and I do believe it's possible. What I do think is necessary is the fact that we don't utilize our resources and your tax dollars to build a $64 million community civic center here, or city hall, pardon me. What we really need to do is reinvest that money, rehabilitate this building, and build you guys the community center that you need, not only for our seniors, but for our youth as well, too. We have great things here in Ferndale. We have affirmations where LGBTQ youth can go and be safe and have a safe spot. We need to have the same thing for our allies as well. And the last thing that we need is a school shooting here in Ferndale. And I believe that with a community center, we are going to be able to have a safe place for people to talk and work together so that we don't have these types of situations that we're seeing throughout our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. May.
Will you repeat the question, please?
Yes. We need a community center. What will you do to facilitate this item?
So I will say that we had the privilege of being able to appoint a task force about a year ago, just under a year ago, who that task force assessed the needs of all of our facilities and determined what we need and where we're moving forward. A community center is the center of a community. As something that I love about our community, and my children have grown up in the current community center before it was no longer our place, our safe space. Yes, we have received grant money, $500,000 offered by our legislators, but we've also, our Parks and Rec Department have also participated in getting grants written for over $1 million, so we actually have more than that. We are still in the process of getting it. I want to see that back in our community. I want our seniors to have a safe place. I want our community to have a safe place, and I'm committed to that.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Ms. May. How will you address the increase in multi-generational dwellings in the city?
Well, it's an important need in this community. I am so fortunate to, again, have been privy to attend the Raymond Shepherd House groundbreaking, a facility that will house about 53 LGBTQ seniors to have a place to live and be safe and be who they are. I know that we also have, in the works, have other affordable housing units coming to this community. I've lived in this community 30 years. I've watched the rates go, the tax rates go up. I've watched the housing increase in price. And I think it's important to be in a community that's diverse and as vibrant as ours, to have different options for any people who want to reside here. I want to be part of those discussions. I am part of those discussions, and I plan to see this move forward with our council.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley.
May you please repeat the question, sir?
How will you address the increase in multi-generational dwellings in the city?
As I sit across here and look at all of you beautiful people, I'm looking at multiple generations right here. And I think that we do have an issue in this city. And I agree with my opponent about the new LGBTQ Center for Seniors. I believe that seniors additionally require more support. However, we also have to remember about the younger generations, and that's something that I am pushing myself on, a new generation. How are we going to get younger people in here if we are not able to allow them the opportunity to afford to live here? I am blessed. I know I am blessed. And I am not ignorant to that aspect of it. However, I do think that there needs to be serious changes, and we need to start having real regulations against the current developers, if you will, that are building apartment complexes that are completely out of reach for the normal citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Hurley. How do you feel about regionalization and the thought it is important in the city?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that question?
How do you feel about regional celebration they have? Cooperation. Regional cooperation, and how do you think about is important?
I think that most importantly for me is that Ferndale is Ferndale. We all pay taxes, we all do all of these things, and I do not feel that it is appropriate unless other cities within our bounds are supporting us as well too. We should not be giving our money, we should not be hosting our public education, we should not be hosting any kind of municipal buildings outside of the Ferndale area. And that's currently what we're doing. And what we really need to focus in on is where can we utilize what we currently have to build things for us, not everyone else. We have to care about Ferndale first. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks May.
When I think about regionalism and cooperation, I think about the municipalities that we have surrounding our community. We have built partnerships with our municipalities. I can see the consistency within our roads, within the type of housing going up, the type of buildings and the businesses coming to the community. I think it's important to build relationships. I have a history of building relationships with our municipality leaders for the last 11 years. With a partnership resulted in our providing more safety along Woodward. I have seen tragedies on Woodward, and I'm thrilled to see that we are finding ways to, one, focus on safety of this community, to see slower traffic calming, and to be able to say that, yes, Ferndale is a community that moves forward. We have a lot of communities that look to us for what we do, and I'm really proud of that. So regionalism, regional transit, yes, for me.
Thank you. Next question, I'll start with Ms. Leaks May. And I'll give you a minute and a half. This is a combined question, and it's both involving the same thing. The first half is, do bicycle lanes and speed bumps increase the city's operating expenses? And that's traffic related. And the second one is, what will it take to increase the enforcement of stop signs and speed zones in the residential sections?
Well, First of all, the bicycle lanes and the street humps. One, the purpose is to slow down traffic. And two, the bicycle lanes is to allow a more diverse type of transit for individuals who utilize that type of transportation. Everyone doesn't get around on four wheels. I'm sorry, the second part of the question, please.
What will it take to improve the enforcement of speed and stop signs?
I realize that that is an issue, and I would like to see classes, training. You know, when we got the dog park, there was training for owners to utilize that dog park. I definitely think that we need to enforce more rules as far as biking. Like I said, across Woodward and across our streets and in our neighborhoods, the purpose is safety. If people don't feel safe riding or using multimodal forms of transportation in our community, then we're not doing our due diligence. So yes, definitely, I would like to see our police officers provide more enforcement, be more stringent as far as being proactive as far as people just not following the rules. It's important, it's a safety issue, and it's something that would definitely need to be pushed more than it has been.
Thank you. Mr. Hurley.
So I have had the gift and the luxury of being able to travel internationally. And one thing that I have found anywhere in Europe is bikes. That's the main transportation, whether it be bikes or whether it be through the subway, the tube, anywhere else from there. I don't feel personally that bumps and bicycles or bicycle lanes, pardon me, are any type of issue, and they only improve not only our city, but also our community and our environment. Let's remember that we are in a global crisis right now. The world is warming. Bikes can help. We don't need to all be in cars. We need to have public transportation. We need to have bicycle lanes. We need to have speed bumps. To go to the second question regarding stop signs and speeding, I would say that our primary goal is to rearrange our budget so that we might actually be able to offer our police force a pension. Or maybe that we can create a situation where we don't have the turnover that we do in our facilities. Because everyone here in our police force, of course I'm talking generically, are new to the force. And they're not here for long because they're going into another bigger city where they're offering them better benefits, better pay, and better everything. So why would they stay here? If you want to fix that problem, let's pay them more and let's figure out how to fix the budget for it.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Hurley. Previous administrations have spent millions of dollars on aesthetics while neglecting the basic services. How will you change this policy and give the taxpayers who pay the bills what they are paying for?
So I think one of the biggest things here is that we all enjoy a beautiful Ferndale. We enjoy the flowers that we see. I never hear any complaints regarding those. I never hear complaints about all of the great things that we really truly do here. What I do want to go back to, and what I'm going to continuously push and stress, is that we have a budget problem. If we really want to fix this, let's look in deeper to the other types of issues that are currently going on and how our current administration is spending, whether it's $1.4 million in subsidies for a new apartment complex. That $1.4 million can go to support anything else that our constituents and our citizens here want, and it has nothing to do with the aesthetics of what we already are creating. So overall, I don't know if we have to have a problem where we fix or take away the nice things that we already have, but I do think that we need to rebalance and readjust and reallocate our finances appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks May.
Please repeat the question, please.
Yes. Previous administrations have spent millions of dollars on aesthetics while neglecting the basic services. What will you change in this policy to give the taxpayers who pay the bills what they are paying for?
So, regarding the aesthetics of our community, we've had many investments in our parks, recreation department, and a lot of those, I don't know if the community knows this, but a lot of that money comes from our Parks and Recreation Department being so talented in their ability to for grant writing. We have received grants for our lovely skate park, our parks, the greenery, with more to come. And I think that me having raised my children in this community, I'm so proud and happy to see the investments that we are making. There was a second part of that, please.
What would you change the policy to give the taxpayers who pay the bills what they are paying for?
I like to think that the taxpayers are liking what they're getting. I believe that they are getting services that we utilize and that we benefit from every day. There are other communities that do not have the services that we have, and if you drive around and think about it, we are receiving far more services than what other communities receive. I want to see that continue.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Leaks May. I had it here. Housing speculators are purchasing more properties that come up for sale. When can these houses come up for sale? The price is often too high for young families. What can the city do to reduce the speculation?
So one of the things that the city has initiated over the course of the last few months is a rezoning. We're looking at more creative ways for people to be able to maintain in their homes. We're looking at more accessory dwelling units. We're looking at more flats, more triplexes, duplexes. So I think this is a matter of being creative with the space that we have and to be able to provide affordable options for community members who want to reside here. Ferndale is a desirable community, and I know that there are a lot of people who want to come here because of everything that we provide and offer. I am committed to the diversity of the housing and the flexibility of the housing, and that's not just for our seniors. That's just not for our LGBT population. It's for our young adults too. You should be able to reside in this community and be able to live just like all of us.
Thank you. Mr. Hurley.
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Whoops. Housing speculators are purchasing more properties that come up for sale. When these houses come up for sale, the price is often too high for young families. What can the city do to reduce this speculation?
You know, this is something that actually hits home for not only myself, but a lot of my friends too. My friends would love to come and live in Ferndale, but it's not affordable to be here anymore. And I think our biggest thing is I go back to it. Our current administration is writing off subsidies that we're all paying for here. All of you are paying millions and millions of dollars to build new buildings for these developers. How about pay to play? This is Ferndale. We're a small city. We're a desirable city. So you just buy it. You build it, and we do not pay for it. Additionally, I also agree with my opponent in the sense that we do need to have more equity and more diversity within our housing communities. And I do believe that every apartment complex that should be built should also have some type of regulations to where we are allowing more affordable housing. I pay $2,200 a month to live in my apartment, and I don't think that's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Hurley. What is your opinion of the findings of the Citizens Facilities Task Force?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
What is your opinion of the findings of the Citizen-Led Facilities Task Force?
I think overall, I do understand that our facilities are in need of some repairment. I understand that we are working in older facilities currently. However, I do think that there is an opportunity that doesn't result in us spending hundreds of millions of dollars in order to improve those. City Hall being one of the most important here. We want to build a $64 million building right now. You all have to vote on that. You all have to vote to get that in. I know as mayor, I can work with everyone here and everyone who's in charge to rehabilitate this building and make it something that is sustainable for the future. I went to Michigan State University and I stayed in a dorm that was built in 1920, and I did just fine. We rehabilitate, we reconstruct, but we do not tear something down just to build something bigger and better. Don't Royal Oak my Ferndale.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks May.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What is your opinion of the findings of the Citizen-Led Facilities Task Force?
Well, first of all, I think that group of community members did a wonderful job in assessing our facilities. There are things that I didn't know regarding the conditions in which our fire department, their housing at the top. I've been to the firehouse, but their housing, they shouldn't have to smell fumes when they're resting and getting ready to go out and protect this community. The police department, facilities for our female police officers. We need to assess that. We also have a vibrant historical museum that is part of this community, and we need to find a way to sustain that as well. I think that the Facilities Task Force led a thorough investigation, and now we have a foundation to provide what we need in a community to assess our facilities and to move forward with our community. I'm proud of what the group has done, and I look forward to implementing some of their many suggestions.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Ms. Leaks May. Some neighborhoods have several neglected or blighted properties. What will you do to address this issue?
Well, I will tell you that has come up as I'm canvassing on meeting with residents who are talking about blight. I think that what we need to do is more enforcement as far as properties, maintaining them. I have community members that I am to get back to pretty soon about some of the issues that they've had. I mean, it's a blight regarding rodent infestations, rubbish, shrubberies, abandoned vehicles, not maintaining services. So I think that us as a community, we need to invest in our code enforcement, economic and development, and make sure that we have enough people out there to be able to assess and enforce the ordinances that we have in place. It's something that we need to focus on. And right now, we don't have a lot of people in that department, but you know what? We can get more people in it.
Thank you. Mr. Hurley.
I do love the sentiments of my opponent. I don't understand where we're going to get that money when we're in a budget crisis. However, I think overall, I lived, before I lived in my apartment, I lived in a home right here, and I am not maybe the best at mowing my lawn. And I will say that I got a ticket for $400 from this city. They patrol, they walk, they look, and they see what's going on here. When we're talking about the blight of our neighbors, I do feel that there should be stricter enforcement regarding the actual physical being of the homes that we are having. Outside of that, I really feel that everyone in Ferndale, for the majority of the time, they care about Ferndale. We love Ferndale. People take pride in their homes. We take pride of our city, and I believe that maybe these aren't necessarily one of the biggest issues that we need to be tackling right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe the next question would be Mr. Hurley. And we're going to sort of get off the subject a little bit and try to find out something about the candidates. What are your volunteer opportunities in the city of Ferndale, and has been the most rewarding and has best prepared you for the public service job you seek?
So, when it comes to volunteering, I personally am a very fond and prominent supporter of the Ferndale Library. One of my favorite things actually to do is go to the DIY festivals and support them by pouring beers. And, I work my behind off to get these people to get the kids reading again. And I feel that fundamentally keeping our children educated and volunteering towards our youth is the most important aspect of anything that we can possibly do in a political standpoint. They are our future. They are going to be the next generation of people that are going to run for these offices. And I feel that it's very important to focus my energy on that. And that is what I will do going forward if I am elected your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks May.
Will you repeat the question, please?
Wait till I find it here. What has been your volunteer opportunities in Ferndale and has most rewarding and the best prepared you for the job you seek?
Well, I can go on and on as far as my volunteer in Ferndale, but what I will say is that I started as a parent in this community. My children were in preschool. I served on boards and commissions way at that level, and my oldest now is 35. So we can take that from there. But I will tell you that when I was on the school board, probably one of the most important things we did, to give you a little history, is that there was a divide as far as the best program, the not-so-great program in the schools. It was really a matter of segregation, and if you were picked for the best program, you felt that you had the upper hand. As a school board member, I'm proud to say that I was a part of that school board that broke that mindset up. We now have equity and equity opportunities for all of our students, and we got an establishment, if you will, that was not focused on the betterment of these kids out of that establishment, and that's why we have the opportunities in the schools that we have today. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud to have been part of that decision-making, and I wouldn't change it.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Ms. Leaks May. What can be done to retain talented employees and avoid the further use of Ferndale being a stepping stone and a notch to higher opportunities?
I will tell you that everywhere I go, and when people find out the community that I live in, they love this community. And I know that when opportunities come up as far as employment in this community, we don't have much trouble filling these jobs. And I will tell you also that a stepping stone is okay. Maybe you've done all you can in one area and you want to move on to higher endeavors. I'm proud to say that the talent that we've brought to this community and has gone on to still be talent even at higher levels. Like some of our former employees are working at the county level now. I'm proud of that. And I don't think that I don't think there should be a negative aspect to someone leaving the city, because they're going on to do great things. And everyone has a right to be able to pursue new endeavors when they feel like there's no more that they can do or grow in an area. I'm proud of what we do.
Thank you. Mr. Hurley.
Can you repeat the question, please?
What can be done to retain talented employees and avoid further use of Ferndale being a stepping stone to a higher opportunity?
Thank you for repeating that. I think overall, I've mentioned this earlier today, we don't support our people here enough. We do not give them benefits. We do not give all of the same resources that other cities are giving, and that's why they're going away. It's not a stepping stone to get away and go to the next big thing. People love Ferndale. If that's what we're saying here, is that we all love Ferndale, then why would they ever want to go unless it was a financial issue for them? So my overall solution would be is let's reallocate and let's look at our budget, because we're spending 30% right now currently on our police and fire and other resources. Let's try to focus in and see how we can support them better so that they stay. Because we want someone to be here from the time they graduate out of whatever source they're coming from, and continue to stay here, just like I want to continue and stay and be your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Hurley. What can you do about the homeless problem?
You know, this is one of the saddest things that, honestly, in my 9 years of living in Ferndale, that I've recently seen often. I mean, we can all walk outside right now and see that we have a clear homeless issue. I mean, for all intents and purposes, the front of City Hall is a homeless shelter. And that's not okay. And I believe that when we can put together our resources, whether it's through the community center, whether it's through a different facility, or whether it's through a new organization that we can create, or a committee that we can create, we can help solve these types of issues. It's really devastating to see, and I don't ever want to see anyone left without a home, especially now that we're coming up to these types of, obviously, winter, and that's always great here. But, you know, overall, I know that this is an issue. How I would solve it would be to collaborate with everyone and all of the resources that all groupings of people want and incorporate the homeless into it as well.
Thank you. Ms. Leaks-May.
So I will tell you that where I work, I get calls from individuals who are homeless every day. I'm talking to a woman right now who is in need of housing, and I'm talking to her, and we are looking for options. So I recognize that we have a problem. But I will tell you that there are organizations such as the Area Agency on Aging, and we're building partnerships with agencies such as Community Housing Network to bring about more housing opportunities for our homeless population. We are now partnering with Community Housing Network to have what's called a housing navigator. That's something that hasn't been done before. And that was grant money that was offered through the county to bring about this project. So, yes, we have a homeless population. Yes, building partnerships is a way to help tackle that issue. And it's a hard issue, but we're moving forward, and I'm committed to it. Like I said, I talk to people every day, and I hear stories that no one wants to hear, but I'm there for them and trying my very best.
Thank you. The next question will be the last question before the closing remarks. And we'll start with Ms. Leaks-May, and it is, if elected, what is the one major problem you hope to solve?
If elected, I would like to tackle what's something that could be a problem, and that's to get out to our community once we receive direction from our facilities task force to talk about the Headley. We're talking about retention of services and retaining people. Well, we need to focus on maintaining what we have in place right now. So our services, it's roughly about 25% of our budget. And to me, when I see that number, I think personnel. I think the people that work for us day in and day out that are counting on us to be able to help them maintain. I am committed to that. And I want to get out to the community and let you know what we have to lose, have those hard discussions, and together decide what we want to do and how we want this community to work and the services we want to provide. I'm committed to that, and I hope you're involved in all of these discussions coming forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley.
I'm sorry, I'm going to need you to repeat the question.
If elected, what is the one major issue you wish to solve during your term?
I think overall, and you know, it's kind of a continuation of what I've been saying throughout our whole entire discussion here, is balancing our budget, making sure that the people of Ferndale are getting what they deserve based on the amount of money that they are contributing to our society. And currently, that's not happening. So if there is another apartment complex that wants to come in, we will not subsidize them. I will fight tooth and nail for you all to make sure that that money is not going towards them. They don't deserve it. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars. Why are we giving them more millions? For them to go and charge $1,700, $1,800, $1,900 a month for a one-bedroom apartment? Yes, it does raise our tax or your property values a little bit, but overall, what is this if we're not going to allow and create a situation where everyone can be a part of Ferndale? That's what Ferndale is. We are diverse. We love that about us. We are Ferndale weird, and it is great for that, and we need to fix that immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the questions, and we'll now give the candidates a 1-minute closing statement in reverse order, and we will start with Ms. Leaks May.
So first, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. You always know how to do it, and I appreciate that. I want to also thank City Hall for allowing us this space, and I want to thank the community for coming out and asking questions, because I know everyone here cares about their community. I want to say that with my over-decade year of experience, I want to bring that trusted leadership, that relationship building that you've known me to build to this role as mayor. I will say it over and over again, experience matters. I've been at this dais where we've had to make hard decisions, where we've had to talk about policy making and decision making. And everyone's heart's in the right place to do what's best for this community, but you are the eyes and ears, and we need to hear from you. I want to also say that I've been humbled to have been endorsed by unions, senators, state reps, my entire council, community members, boards and commissions, your word means everything to me, and what you're saying to me is that you trust my leadership. I ask for your support on November 7th or before as your next mayor, and we're going to move forward together.
Thank you. Mr. Hurley.
I don't have as much experience as my opponent does, but what I do have is drive, and I'm a fighter. And what I will do is I will fight every single obstacle that comes into the way that will detriment the citizens of this city. I love this city. There is no way that I will ever let it fail. Also, additionally, I have done the same exact thing as my opponent. I've walked the streets, I've gotten my petitions, I hit the doors. One thing that I've realized is no one is happy with our current administration. They're not. And yet, our current mayor is endorsing my opponent. They're currently all working together. I am a grassroots operation here. I don't have all of the endorsements and money. I am going to work and fight for all of you come hell or high water. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it on a penny budget. I appreciate your time. I really hope you guys consider me. My name is Sean Hurley for mayor.com.
Thank you. That concludes this portion of the forum. We will now take a short break. We will seat the council members and continue the forum in about 10 minutes. Thank you, and stand by.
Raylon did good, and you didn't do as bad as I thought you did.
Good evening for the Ferndale City Council Forum. Thank you and welcome back. The candidates for council are Donnie Johnson, Rolanda Kelly, and Dennis Whitty. We begin the opening statements with Mr. Johnson.
Good evening.
1 minute.
Oh, thank you, sir. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this and to the City of Ferndale for letting us use City Hall. My name is Donnie Johnson. I have lived here in Ferndale for 8.5 years. I have been involved in this community for all 8.5 of those years, serving on boards, commissions, working elections, serving as the chair of the Facilities Task Force we heard a lot about in the first half with the mayoral forum. By day, I am the Associate Budget Director for the City of Detroit. So I literally do municipal government for a living. I balance budgets, I start programs, I improve programs, I know how government functions, and I'm ready to bring what I do professionally to the town I live in and the town I love. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Good evening, Ferndale. Thank you for coming tonight, and to the Women League of Voters for hosting. I'm Rolanda Kelly, and I'm humbled to stand before you as your city council candidate. With a deep commitment to the residents of our community and listening to your concerns and learning from your stories and leading with your needs at the forefront is what will guide me as a public servant in this role. Somewhere along the way, it feels like we lost sight of the fundamental truth that sitting in this seat means that we're here to represent you, the community. I believe that a strong community and effective government emerges when we unite. We break down barriers and engage in meaningful conversations that put you, the residents of Ferndale, in the driver's seat. Together, we can create positive change. My foundation of my campaign is built on connectivity and transparency, sustainable growth, and responsible budgeting, which I believe are essential for our city's growth and prosperity. And I look forward to sharing with you more tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Whitey. I am a candidate for City Council, and I'm asking for your vote. I've been around this community my whole life. My great-grandparents were some of the original settlers of Ferndale, up in northeast Ferndale, and the house still stands today that they helped build up. But beyond that, I've been very involved and active in our community through various boards and commissions, brownfield redevelopment. I've served on the budget committee back in 2011, amongst many other community initiatives and nonprofit volunteering. Currently, I serve as the Fern Care Vice President, and I support things such as Ferndale Pride and many other adventures in this city. I think what sets me apart from any other candidate is diversity of experience. I'm a retired / whistleblower police officer, a licensed attorney practicing criminal defense, and also an advanced emergency medical technician. I think my experience and education will serve us all well in Ferndale and me as your next city council person. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now start our questions, and we will start with Mr. Johnson. First question, what are some of your professional and community experience that will provide you and prepare you for the role on City Council?
As I stated in my opening statement, I moved to Michigan in 2015, and 3 months later, I volunteered to work in election. It was actually the last Headley override vote in 2015. So we've really come full circle on that. Since then, I serve on the Civil Service Board, where I am now the chair in my second term. I'm on the Housing Commission, having just started my second term. I chaired the Ferndale Facilities Resident-Led Task Force last year that produced the report that you've all been hearing about. Like I said, by day, I'm the Associate Budget Director for the City of Detroit. I moved to Michigan to join the City Government of Detroit in its recovery from bankruptcy and reestablishing programs and stabilizing its finances. I've been very proud to be a part of that, and look forward to bringing that knowledge and experience and commitment to this community and to Southeast Michigan generally to this role.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Sure, I have 20 years of leadership experience at everyone's favorite store, Costco Wholesale, and that equips me with an array of diversity to bring to the table, from team leadership, budget management, many different areas. I've also, the Ferndale area Dems Vice Chair, Oakland County Party, the LGBTQ Vice Chair. I was a voter protection lead here in Ferndale, ensuring safe and fair elections. Also on the DDA Vision Committee. I built really strong relationships in the community and with our leaders all the way up to the congressional level from all of my involvement, which will really help me leverage those relationships should be elected to City Council.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Yes, so my professional and community experience will benefit me in this position greatly. First, as I already stated in my opening, I have decades of community service here in Ferndale. I've been volunteering since I think I was 15 years old. I'm 45 now, so that's 30 years, 3 decades. And throughout that time, I was a volunteer on many different community initiatives. The Fern Care parking garage fundraisers, the garage sale fundraisers, things like that, fundraisers for Ferndale Pride, and amongst many other things. In addition, I was on the City Council for a temporary term in 2019 when I was appointed and was able to accomplish 3 major goals. But beyond that, I'm currently on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. My law practice, the Whitey Law Center, is actually a sponsor of Ferndale Pride as well as Hazel Park Pride. I'm a supporter of Ferndale and Hazel Park Schools, which is both of our school districts that serve our city. And beyond that, I was also on the Budget Committee in 2011, which makes that experience that much more critical this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Kelly. What is your opinion of the findings of the Citizens Facilities Task Force?
I think that they did a great job, and I'm grateful for their time commitment. I think it's an extremely large ask, and I'm curious about the information that was provided because there was no video or minutes of any of the meetings. So there's not a whole lot of transparency there. All we have is what the city staff told us and then the final report. So, I want to know what the information was involved in gathering that data and if they knew about the budget crisis that we were going into and how we are supposed to afford those. And if we do all these buildings with that amount of money, what's the long-term plan to take care of them? So we're not where we are in 20 years. Where we are now with all these buildings not being taken care of.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Well, having served in 2011 on the Budget Committee, I know exactly how much effort and sacrifice it takes to be on a committee such as the Facilities Task Force. We had several residents who investigated week after week, went to the facilities, looked at them, took notes, talked to employees, things of that nature. And the report is absolutely stunning. And that is that we have aging infrastructure that we need to deal with. And we have female police officers that are in makeshift closets in our police department. And we have firefighters who are female who have makeshift, basically, areas for their locker room. And it's just not fair. It's not right. When we talk about attracting talent to this city, we need true equity. If we're going to say we're Ferndale and equitable, then we need to actually demonstrate that. I think the Facilities Task Force is a good start. It's not the end. I want to look at everything more closely, but I do believe that anything that would be recommended within new buildings or anything should be voted on project by the people of Ferndale, so we do have the true citizens' input into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Well, perhaps I'm biased because I chaired that task force, but I think we did a great job. I do know that minutes were taken. I will follow up with the city clerk or the city manager to find out where those minutes are because every meeting did have minutes taken. I think Dennis hit on a really important point, which is, the report is intended to be a starting point, not a necessary and binding prescription for the city. And so the intent of the report was to set out steps over numerous years that would allow for community engagement at each one of those steps for input into whether we should or should not move forward. I know tonight you've heard a lot about an alleged expensive city hall. That is not the case. City Hall is in fact in the last phase of the plan and made optional. The first priority of the Ferndale Facilities Task Force report are our firehouses and our police facility, as you know, is attached to City Hall and is now about 6,000 square feet below its need for operations. That's it.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Whitey. What can be done to retain talented employees and further use the Ferndale from being a stepping stone or a notch on their resume?
Well, good question. So Ferndale faces what many other cities and employers face, and that is turnover. We all know that we don't have endless money in this city, right? We do know this. And we can't just throw money out and say, yeah, we want to pay everybody $1 million. I wish we could, but we can't. And so, in other words, to retain employees, what we need to do is give them fair wages, do the best we can with that, but also do things such as employee appreciation. Sometimes people take less pay if they're treated better as an employee. I'm not saying that our employees are mistreated by any means. I think they're treated pretty well, and most of them are happy. A lot of them do move on to certain things. Look at our mayor. He became our county executive thereafter. So a lot of good things come out of Ferndale talent, from leadership as well as the frontline employees. I also think that being a stepping stone is not necessarily a bad thing because we actually produce good talent throughout the region, and that is indirectly benefiting us from those that move on to the state and county that are still assisting Ferndale in those regards. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
I share, Mr. Whitey's views on this and Ms. Leeks May's views on this. I think that, turnover is something that we should really be proud of in a lot of cases because a lot of the folks that are leaving the city are going on to bigger and better opportunities, and that does benefit Ferndale. As these folks move up and they establish themselves in positions in the state government, the county government, hell, the federal government, these are all opportunities to have connections for people who have fondness and an affection for Ferndale, who look upon us and go, hey, I started there. They gave me my start. They gave me that leg up. They gave me a chance. That's only a good thing for Ferndale. Should we continue to raise wages for our employees? Yes, of course, but we must remain conscious of the fact that we are a small city government. Will we be able to match the pay of Chicago or Los Angeles? No, that's not realistic. Folks know what they're signing on for when they join a small city government. But what we do have is heart and the opportunity to grow in your role and to position you for success in bigger and better things.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I think when I think about turnover and the rate that we've had turnover and losing our directors, I would think it would go down to culture or morale. So when we have a large turnover, it's where's the morale, where's the issues, and we need to get in there and take a look and see where the culture is, and maybe have some different training opportunities in there so we're not losing people.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Johnson. Do you intend to threaten us with reduced public safety and reduced DPW services to get the Headley passed?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't classify it as a threat. I would classify it as a statement of facts. I am the Associate Budget Director for the City of Detroit. I know what it means for a city to lose a large chunk of its revenue. I know what that means for services. There is no money machine in the basement of this building. If the city loses 25% of its general fund, that necessarily means cuts in services and staff. That's what that means. It is not an infinite pot of money. It is just like your bank account at home. You can only write so many checks, and then you're done. If we lose 25% of our general fund for a failure to provide an override for the Headley millage rate, then we will have to reduce services. It's not a threat. It's a fact. These are numbers. You can't take 25% out of your whole and expect to keep spending like you have 100% of your whole.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I think that there's other things that we could look at if the Headley doesn't get passed. We could look at our budget, where we're spending our money. When I'm looking at Costco, when I'm looking at we're not making our budget, we're not bringing in the finances, I'm not talking about cutting my employees' benefits. I'm talking about where can we cut and where are we spending, so I think we really need to take a deep dive in that and look at what we can do with that. And not just say the first thing that's going to go is the services for the people that are paying for us.
Thank you, Mr. Whitey.
Will I threaten to cut your public safety? Absolutely not. As a retired former police officer, as well as an advanced EMT that still works contingently in the city of Detroit, I know how valuable public safety is. But what I think is very important for any council member is to have an honest discussion, not threats. And so the people of Ferndale will get to decide this. This will not be a council decision. It will be the people of Ferndale that vote on the Headley. The council cannot override the Headley. What you're electing the council to do is make the decisions based upon what the result is from the Headley. And those decisions are, we override the Headley and we try to maintain the same level of service, of course, or if we have to cut because the Headley's not overridden, where do we make the cuts? And that's where your city council person is really most valuable, and their role in this entire endeavor. And so that is what you want, somebody with experience who knows about these things. I'm not saying cut salaries or mistreat people, but we have to have honest discussions as a community, not pie in the sky, not endless hopes, but real concrete discussions.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson. No, I'm sorry. Number 5, we'll start with Ms. Kelly. Ferndale has been in the news recently after an ACLU study showed disappropriate number of minority motorists getting tickets. What are your reasons to improve racial equity in Ferndale?
So it's about building partnerships. We need to build partnerships with our bordering communities. We need to diversify our police department. We need to look at the DE&I initiatives that are there. I know that we have policies and initiatives in place, but what are we doing to implement them and ensure that our officers are trained and they're not spending all their time on the borders? I personally have a son who his girlfriend is a person of color, and I get worried every time they come to my house or leave that they're going to get pulled over because of that. We also have no people of color on our police department, so I think it's very important to see what's going on there, look at our hiring practices, and diversify our police department.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Yes, well, concerning the study itself, I don't believe it was ACLU. I think it was another organization out of Sterling Heights, the most recent one. And what that was dealing with traffic stops on 8 Mile and whether the Ferndale police are stopping people outside of the city. What that study does undertake is that the first 3 lanes of eastbound 8 Mile is still the city of Ferndale. So that's one major premise, that there's a problem with that. But that aside, we do need diversity in our police department. We do need excellent training. I have family members that are persons of color, and I do not fear when my nephews walk in Ferndale. Not for a minute, because in Ferndale, our police are fair. They do everything they can for this community. And, and beyond that, regardless of what color they are, what gender they are, what sexual orientation they are, I've seen many people treated fair of all different cultures. But I would like to recruit more people of diversity for our police department. It is essential. And one of the ways to do that is to encourage female police officers to come here, African American, or Arabic, whatever the case may be, and start getting fair facilities for these officers to attract them here and keep our police department good and improve it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
I think we need to continue, our training for our police officers and all first responders in Ferndale. Continue that implicit bias training and other community engagement training and awareness training. I think that we need to have a conversation about the policing priorities. Which policing activities do police officers prioritize when they're out on patrol? Is it traffic stops for minor offenses? Is it traffic stops for only offenses which pose immediate risk to public health and safety? These are the kinds of decisions that the police department can make in conjunction with the city government and determine what its priorities are. I don't think the priority should be pulling folks over for fairly minor traffic violations. If you're not posing a threat, let's de-escalate that issue. And I agree, diversity. We need to beef up our recruitment, try harder, continue to beat the bush and find out what we can do to attract a diverse candidate pool for our police academy.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Whitey. Some neighborhoods have several neglected or blighted properties. What would you do to address this issue?
Great question. So it used to be in Ferndale, especially when I was growing up, code enforcement was like a police patrol and went up and down the streets and looked for code violations and then would give warnings out, and then if they weren't corrected, there would be violations. Currently, with our budget, we don't have that luxury anymore. So basically what we do is rely on residents to make those reports to City Hall so that code enforcement can come out. A lot of people that I've talked to said, you know, my neighbor over there, this looks like crap, and whatever the case may be. And I'll say, well, did you put in a request with code enforcement? Did you do a see-click fix? Well, no. And they're under the presumption, too, that code enforcement just kind of goes door to door and looks for violation. And that's just not happening. So what we need to do is, because we can't bring in more code enforcement, because we can't afford it, to give more code enforcement officers to do patrol, we can encourage residents to actually cooperate with code enforcement when it needs to occur to report these blighted properties that are causing rats and abandoned vehicles and all the stuff that takes away from our quality of life here in Ferndale.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Blight is something that, I don't want to call it near and dear to my heart, because it's not quite accurate, but it's something that I'm keenly aware of. The City of Detroit, my day job, I oversee the demolition and construction department for the City of Detroit. So, you've probably seen the news. We've been undertaking a lot of efforts to eliminate blight. And one of the primary drivers of blight is a failure in code enforcement, is insufficient enforcement of blight code and other property maintenance codes. The other issue is something that was actually hit on a little bit in the question during the mayoral debate, and that is speculators and property investors, folks who buy properties and allow them to sit vacant. That is a real problem in every community, especially in Southeast Michigan, where property values are high, property is hot, folks want to get in. They're holding these properties, but they're not maintaining them. So part of code enforcement is enforcing specifically against non-resident owners, ensuring that they are held accountable and that we engage in the nuisance abatement process to go through the seizure process for properties that have not maintained and are not resident in Ferndale.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
So to echo what my fellow candidate said, yeah, we definitely need to increase the code enforcement. I'd also like to see, we have the CDBG, I think it's called, funding, and see where that goes, and that could help people lower income and seniors to have help with their lawns and snow removal and minor home repair that could help with those blighted properties as well.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Johnson. How can boards and commissions be best used by the city council?
That's a fantastic question. So boards and commissions, I think, are sort of unsung heroes of city government, especially a small city government like Ferndale. This is a part-time council. We have a full-time city manager, but the boards and commissions are out there. They are populated by residents from all walks of life, all professional backgrounds, all interests, and they're serving to kind of be the eyes and ears in these specific areas. So arts and culture, housing, for our public housing for the city. They're serving as volunteers to keep these critical functions going. And I think one thing the city council should do is continue working hard at encouraging the city council liaisons to those boards and commissions to take that role seriously, show up to those meetings, engage in that process, and hear what these boards and commissions are doing. Really bring them back into this process. This is the best way to leverage a large number of interested people who want to be involved in the community. They want to help, but maybe they don't want to run for city council. We should take advantage of that knowledge pool.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I agree. They're extremely important, and it's great to get our citizens engaged. I think what I'd like to see with our boards and commissions is more diversity and a more collaborative approach with our city council and our mayor. Right now, our mayor picks who goes on each board, and there could be some bias there. So I'd like to see more diversity, more different voices at the table and on the boards making decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Yes, so with boards and commissions, I think is the backbone of city government. And when I say that, I mean those are the people who are volunteering on one specific type of subject, and they bring their expertise to that subject. Some people don't have expertise when they go to their board or commission, but get it when they arrive, and they really flourish in it. And so using boards and commissions, I think, is an important element of a successful community and any successful local government. How they are appointed, our charter actually lets the mayor appoint some of them, but not all of them. Our city charter calls for the city council to make appointments to certain boards and commissions, and certain are mayoral appointments. With regard to that, some of those are dealt with by state law, where the mayor has to make that appointment. But regardless, what we need is diversity of not just of people, but of opinion. People who are for certain things, against certain things, whatever the case may be, and whatever that board or commission is, so that we get the best work product and work closely with that board or commission as a city council.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Ms. Kelly. How do you feel what would improve the trust in city council decisions?
Communication, I think, is the key to that, and just getting ahead of it and involving our citizens and letting them know what's going on at the beginning of a project, and getting diverse voices in there, having, quarterly meetings where we can listen and learn and lead from all of us together, and letting people know before things hit the agenda, before it gets to the council, before there's a power dynamic of, standing there for 3 minutes and not being sure if your voice is heard. So I think it's just really important communication and bridging that gap and building the trust again with our community members.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Well, I think to improve the trust from city council decisions is to begin at the beginning of any process, not to be more reactionary to things, such as certain things passing and then people objecting. We do have I'll say in Ferndale, we do have a great mechanism where people can be informed if they truly want to be, and that is our council agendas are put out online on the Thursday before any council meeting. And when you can review that and you can ask questions. And of course, you only get 3 minutes at the podium up there, which, so I understand sometimes that's not enough. But what I encourage people to do, and I think what we need to do and improve the trust, is keep the transparency. But not only the transparency, honest talk, honest discussions. Don't give pie in the sky answers or everything's going to be hunky-dory when we know it necessarily can't be. And I think having the honest discussion, good or bad, about any issue between city council and residents will certainly improve the trust between residents and city council decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
So I echo a lot of what my colleagues up here have said. Communication is key. I think one thing that I would love to do upon becoming a city council member would be to push the city clerk and the city government to make the voting record a lot clearer and easier to access for council actions. I think we take for granted that a lot of things are done through the consent agenda, but in reality, there are votes taken. And I think having that made public allows folks to know the nature of the debate and how folks came down on issues. I would really like to do what the City Council of Detroit does and meet outside of City Hall. So throughout the year, the City Council actually has its formal session in locations that aren't the City Hall downtown, and we could do the same. So, finding a location in each quadrant of the city, if you roughly, divide up Ferndale, and having the council meet in those locations so that residents who are there can more easily come and attend those meetings. Office hours, I would intend to hold office hours as a council member so that folks know where I am and why I'm thinking what I'm thinking.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Whitey. Mr. Whitey, how will you address the increase in multi-generational dwellings in the city?
Okay, that's a good question. It came up in the mayoral issue as well. So how do we increase that? Well, first, we need to step back and see what is the reality, what are the constraints. There are certain things the city council cannot do under state law. If somebody buys a property and it's already zoned for a certain purpose, they can do what that property, whatever they want with it, as long as it fits within the confines of the law. Where the city council can come in is when there's a variance. So if somebody needs some type of exception for a property, the city council then has some authority to move in and also mandate certain things, such as affordable housing, multi-dwelling units, whatever the case may be for that area, which would fit that exact neighborhood. But I think that, excuse me, but with some of that, and to encourage that, is to inform the public and educate the public on what the city council can and cannot do. And when the city council can act under the law and make requirements for whatever development there is, we darn well should. We darn well should, and we should make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
I apologize. Could I ask you to repeat the question?
Certainly.
Make sure I got it.
What will you do to address the increase in multi-generational dwellings in the city?
So I think, part of this is an issue of, planning and master planning for the city and establishing what our values are in that master plan. I think it's saying, listen, we know we want more housing in Ferndale, but what we don't want are large apartment buildings. I think the community has been pretty clear on that. Large apartment structures or multifamily structures are just they're not the vibe. So let's find another solution. And I think, the movement of the Planning Commission toward missing middle zoning reforms is going to go a long way. I think we can look at infill housing solutions, demo and replace housing solutions for abandoned structures that would replace those with duplexes, triplexes, nothing more than a quadplex, 4 units in one structure. But with that, we also have to address issues like traffic patterns and parking, that in those multifamily neighborhoods with multifamily units. And that can absolutely be done. Fortunately, we have a lot of other jurisdictions around the country to look at as examples, and we can take advantage of that and address this while keeping the character of Ferndale, but ensuring that we have housing for everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Yeah, I think we're already in the process of our rezoning, and we need to continue that to address the missing middle and have a variety of different homes here, the duplexes, quadplexes. I think, I know one of the big initiatives to get that pushed through is taking away the parking restrictions, and I wouldn't necessarily be a fan of that. I think, if you look at the last census, we're 2-car households here in Ferndale, and, especially in the downtown area. So we got to look at each area differently and see how we can address that and have more housing to also increase diversity.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Johnson. What can you do to provide a community center to the city of Ferndale?
Oh, so much. So this is the most exciting question I was hoping this would come up for me. So as I've stated, by day I'm the associate budget director for the city of Detroit, and a big part of my portfolio is our capital infrastructure. And building recreation centers is something that I do. I am part of. We are actually building the first 2 new recreation centers in over 50 years in the city of Detroit right now. And the best part of that is the city of Detroit taxpayers are not footing the bill for that. That is federal funding. Those are grants from the state, from the federal government, from philanthropic foundations. I know how to get that money. So when we say the city has gotten some grants, that's wonderful, and they're off to an amazing start. But what I can bring to this role are connections to the other funding sources, both in Lansing, in Pontiac, in Washington, D.C., and in the philanthropic foundations. I can bring in money, and we can pay for this recreation center. Am I promising we won't put any city dollars in? Of course not. That's not realistic. I'm not going to make that promise up here. But what I am going to say is I know how to fund a recreation asset, and we can do that here.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I understand the pain with not having a community center for 2 years, and I know we're on the right track, and we have some grants coming in. And I think they just filled out for another grant just recently. But what I could bring is my relationships. So I have relationships. Here at City Council, we're about writing policy, implementing policy, building relationships, and that's what I have. I build relationships. I have relationships with our Congress people. I have relationships with our state reps, our senators, and I could utilize those relationships to benefit us and help us get more grant money and get a community center here in Ferndale.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Yeah, so we've been without a community center for 2 years, and honestly, it's ridiculous. A community such as Ferndale not having our community center is a big hit, and it's not just a big hit in terms of use, but also our senior citizens who use that for their senior group meetings, youth, the enrichment classes, everything that we used to have. We have a partnership with Hazel Park to share services, and I'm grateful that Hazel Park has offered that. But I think we need to work for a community center. How do we do it? Well, there's a couple ways. First, we can partner with not-for-profits, certain things, get sponsorships of a play structure sponsored by a certain law firm or something maybe. Also, grants would be a way. So like a grant from not only the federal, but the state government, the county, whatever the case may be. And it will require tax dollars as well. This is an honest discussion. We're not going to be able to build a community center without tax dollars, but that is one of my priorities within all of our facilities, is to get our own community center back on track and world-class and sustainable for decades and decades to come.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Kelly. What can you do about the traffic jams caused by the train traffic on Hilton?
Gosh, I might have to leave this one for Dennis. I mean, you know, we all know it's his passion. You know, there's not a lot we can do at this city council level, but Dennis has a plan for that. So, you know, I like his plan with the app and things like that and building a bridge. So I'll just turn it over to him.
Thank you, Ro. Okay, so since this is probably something we do agree on, is the trains obstruct our crossings, Hilton, 9 Mile, Camborne, and we have to drive around, or you have to wait an hour and a half just for trains. And so while the city council cannot regulate how long a train can hold up an intersection, because the U.S. Court of Appeals stepped in and said, sorry, citizen states, you don't get to do that. It's a federal issue. And our president and Congress certainly is not going to get together today to solve our problem in Ferndale at our train tracks. So what I propose is that we do what the city of Woodhaven does, and that what Flat Rock has begun to do, and that is install a camera system with an app, where you can have the app on your phone before you leave your house to see if a train is coming. Beyond that, I would like to get some type of warning systems, because you can't be on your phone when you drive anymore. Remember, that's a ticket, right? And so being on your phone to check the app before, you know, a mile from the railroad won't be so good. If we could have some type of warning system, train ahead, something that illuminates with an LED symbol, that may be beneficial. The other thing is, if you're standing there waiting for the train, you can't drive to 8 Mile or 10 Mile around it. And given that, I think we should at least build a pedestrian bridge and bicycle bridge over that. We can't do it for cars, unfortunately, but we can do it for bicycles at, and I'll say relatively not too expensive, because it's all relative. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
I don't know how to follow that. I think my response is what Dennis said. Because you know, but what both Ro and Dennis have said is true. The city council has really no ability to control what happens with the trains. The only thing I would add to it is, you know, continuing to push that dialogue with the train companies to say, please sit down with us and have a conversation. We've had some productive conversations with them before. It varies, it goes back and forth. Sometimes they're willing and sometimes they're not. But continuing to just push on that, be the thorn in the side and say, listen, we just want to talk to you. We just want to figure out what we can do to make this work for our communities. That's all I can add to that.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Whitey. With the push for greater density, we lose permeable surface, forcing more rain into our aging sewer systems. How would you address this issue?
Great question, actually really good question. So not only with buildings being constructed, do we lose space or certain aesthetics, but we put an increase of demand on our city services. So anything we build or anything we create more densely, we're going to have the infrastructure to support that. And that's everything from sewers, water, things of that nature. But beyond that, it's also police response, fire response. How many more calls will that generate? How many more medical runs for the fire department? And so when we talk about density and building residential or even businesses, we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to support that. Because without that, we can build all we want and we can make the city as dense as we want, but it won't be Ferndale because we won't have the same services for that. The other thing in Ferndale that I like is that when parkland is taken, you're supposed to replace it with something else, because parkland is very, very scarce in our city. We have great parks here, but at the same time, they're few and far between, and I'm glad that we have that ordinance to preserve that parkland when anything is built with a parkland. We got to find it somewhere else. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Well, if you thought I was excited about recreation investments, wait till you hear about my stormwater infrastructure passion. So I love infrastructure, just generally as a sort of general statement. Stormwater infrastructure is increasingly crucial, not just nationwide, not just globally, but particularly in Southeast Michigan. We are living over some of the oldest infrastructure in the state of Michigan. Some of our water conduits and sewer outflow pipes are literally from the late 1700s. Detroit still uses the original oak pipes downtown that were laid in the earliest days of the founding of Detroit. So stormwater infrastructure is something we cannot address under the ground. We can't dig everything up and put in bigger pipes. But what we can do is we can look into detention and retention solutions. So that would mean that every time we're reconstructing a road, every time we're doing a major construction, we're building into that a requirement that these things put in detention and retention solutions so that water is held and then slowly released into the outflow system, as well as increased bioswales in developments, rain gardens, even the rain barrel program that Ferndale already has, expanding that, encouraging residents. Every drop of water we take out of the outflow system is one less drop that could potentially end up in our basements.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly?
Geez, I don't know how to follow him on that one, but, yeah, so we have to update our infrastructure and our sewer systems. To do that, we need to increase our green space, and like he said, the bioswales, and, yeah, I'll just let Donnie take that one, because it's not my forte, but I will certainly learn about it.
Next question, we will start with Mr. Johnson. As you know, there's a large number of marijuana dispensaries in Ferndale. Are you concerned about the bubble, and what would you do to diversify Ferndale's economy?
I think this is a really good question because it gets into sort of some wonky economic stuff. But, you know, when you think about having your local economy be heavily reliant on just one industry, that's never a good idea. But fortunately, yes, we do have a lot of dispensaries. Yes, we do have some handling facilities in Ferndale. But I think that, generally speaking, our local economy is fairly diversified. I don't think we are leaning too heavily on, you know, a one-legged stool of marijuana. It is a great revenue opportunity for the city, but should we continue to diversify? Of course. I would love to see more small businesses. I would like to build out small business support programs to allow for startup loans, low to no interest loans or grants, even forgivable grants, for folks to start small businesses, to improve existing businesses and stay afloat. You know, I'm all about diversifying the local economy, bringing folks in. Ferndale's a place that loves mom and pop, and we should continue to support and invest in that, along with our weed shops.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly?
To echo what Donnie said, yes, I think it's okay to have the weed shops, and it is a great revenue. I think I'm more concerned about the coffee shops on every corner. You know, we do need to diversify it. You know, we are a destination city. We have empty storefronts, and we just shouldn't have that. So we need to do outreach and, you know, try to get more diverse businesses here. And that's what I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Whitey.
So this city voted overwhelmingly when we voted to legalize marijuana. I believe it was upwards of 80% plus of Ferndale residents who showed up to vote in 2018 said, yes, legalize this. And that's listening to the residents by having dispensaries and marijuana facilities here. Now, of course, I don't think, as both of my fellow candidates stated, we should have, you know, just base our revenue on that, because we do need to diversify. Any city should, because if you rely on one industry or one type of business, when it shuts down, the city goes down. I looked at that downriver where some of the steel mills shut down. The city of Ecorse and River Rouge went through a living hell because a lot of people were even employed there. And I don't want to see Ferndale do that. So I think we do need to diversify. And I also think that there should be small businesses. I love Hilton Cafe up there at 9.5 in Hilton. I love Dessert Oasis on Hilton by Marshall. All these small businesses that are startups that want to be here in Ferndale and are still mom and pop, and closeness to the community is what I value most. And I would like to see a lot more of that coming to Ferndale versus national chains.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Ms. Kelly. When a development project comes to the city council, how much control does the city council have to actually approve or disapprove the project?
We don't have a whole lot of control. You know, that has been done at the, is it the zoning, the building and zoning? So they've went through everything. We have a little bit of control, but there's a lot of legalities involved if we vote no once they've done all their due diligence to come to us. So, so we don't have as much control as I would like.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Yeah, I wish the Ferndale City Council had the magic wand to say yes, no, yes, no. Wouldn't that be nice? But we don't, and as was stated, the law restricts the city council in many different regards. As I stated earlier, if a private developer buys property that's already zoned for a certain thing, they can build that certain thing, and the city can't deny them. If the city does, basically, we're going to be in Oakland Circuit Court getting sued and spending a lot of money in lawyers' fees. You know, beyond that, it would just be a waste of the city's time because we would probably lose. So I don't want to put the city in unnecessary litigation. Beyond that, though, when we can control things such as a zoning variance, or if there are certain things with funding or taxes that they need city approval for, with regard to that, we can mandate certain things. And then we can say yes, no, or you can, but. And it must be a conditional thing. And I think that's important, is the yes, but, and make it part of the contract. Not, oh, they'll get to that, they'll have adequate parking, I guess. No, this is a requirement. If you don't meet it, you don't build. You're in breach of the contract, and then we sue you. So beyond that, I think we need to just keep our authority when we have it and deal with these issues.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start, Mr. Whitey. How do you feel about regional cooperation? And do you think this is important? I'm sorry.
I genuinely thought for
Johnson.
a minute, I was like, did I answer that? And
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson.
possible. As my colleagues here stated, you know, city councils have you know, very little authority over the developments themselves, over what private owners of properties can do. But the one thing that city councils and legislative bodies do have, and it's both the carrot and the stick, are variances and incentives. You heard a lot about incentives earlier in the evening. Incentives are a critical part of development. Every developer is going to want them. They're going to need them for some portion of their financing structure. But what a city council can do is say, well, we're not going to give you that. You have to play ball. You have to do what we want. We are not going to award you the incentive packages you want. It is the council's prerogative to award tax abatements, to award zoning variances. There are many things that council can withhold from a developer's desired project such that they have to play ball. You know, we cannot directly say, no, you can't build there, but what we can say is, well, we're not going to make it easy or cheap for you to build there if you do not play ball with us and do what's right for our community.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Whitey, how do you feel about regional cooperation, and do you think this is important in what areas?
Excellent question. So yes, we have to have regional cooperation. Ferndale is not an island or an entity unto itself. We have many communities surrounding us, Detroit to the south, Hazel Park to the east. We have Pleasant Ridge, Royal Oak for a very sliver part, and Oak Park. So we've got many different small cities around us. And to regionalize is a good thing. What we do right now, we regionalize our fire department, because if there's a structure fire, say in Hazel Park, then there's at least one truck coming from Ferndale as well as everybody in Hazel Park. Same thing in Madison Heights. Hazel Park goes up there. In Ferndale, if we have an issue, Hazel Park comes over as an automatic mutual aid. It's not even, they just say, hey, there's a fire. Over they come. And not only that, you can get more resources that way. It's a great example of regionalization, because then we get the services of the fire consortium in Oakland County that does the hazmat and all the specialty things. And I will say, with our industry and our trains moving through here with hazardous chemicals, I think that's essential for any community. So the fire department is just one example of that, but I think we need to explore other areas to save costs and improve service with regionalization.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Regionalism is pretty much critical and a core part of what makes a small town successful. We are an inner ring suburb, bounded on all sides, as Dennis said, by our friends in other jurisdictions. Together, we are stronger. Ferndale alone does not have as strong a voice in Lansing, for example, as a coalition of neighboring suburbs that come together and go, you know what? We all want this thing. We are all with one voice saying, this is what we need for Southeast Michigan, this is what we need for everything north of 8 Mile, this is what we need in our communities. And together, we are louder. Together, we are more powerful. We are needed to bind the region together through transit. That is an incredibly important part of regionalism, and something that I know we support here in Ferndale and that we will continue to push for, that I will continue to push for as a city council member. Regionalism, co-response for emergencies, like Dennis said, infrastructure coordination, fund-seeking coordination. It's absolutely critical for the life and success of a small town like ours.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly?
And I agree with everything that's been set up here. It's extremely important on many levels, so we're not alone on an island, right? So, for example, the Woodward Road diet, right? It's just us here alone on an island. It would be nice if it was connected both ways, right? So you could go from point A to point B. So I'd like to see more of that in those regards. Also, like a community center. We could have partnered with Hazel Park. It was brought to our mayor's attention. Our city managers discussed it a little bit from my understanding. But with that, if we partnered with a community center, it would save us costs and also save us costs on maintaining the building, because that's where it gets extremely expensive. So I think it's really important to build those relationships with our neighboring cities.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Johnson. And this is something that the council really doesn't have a right to make any decisions on, but it's always asked at every one of these. How would you strengthen relationship with the school district?
Ooh, that's a really good, that's a good question.
And Mr. Johnson, you're first.
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. I think we all know that the school district is an independent school district. It does not take orders from or otherwise have to, interact with the city government if it doesn't wish to. But what I would like for it to do is wish to. I want to have a closer relationship. Again, this goes to it's almost internal city regionalism. Together, we're stronger. Together, we can push for and fight for the things we need. As Ferndale invests in infrastructure, that can only help the school district as well. As Ferndale improves its property values, that revenue also benefits the school district. Together, we know we can work together on what are our joint priorities. What does the school district need? Is it investment in its infrastructure? Which, yes. What can we do jointly to help each other? Nothing stops us from working together, other than a desire not to. So I want to reach out, I want to establish those relationships, I want to sit down and say, let's have a regular touch base. What can we do to cooperate?
Thank you. Ms. Kelly?
I think it's extremely important for us to collaborate with the school board. I think currently the school board meetings and the city council meetings are held on the same day, so it's a little bit of a conflict. So I'd like to see that resolved with different meetings at different times, and also have just more collaboration, maybe have the city council liaison at the school board meetings and vice versa. So we can build a relationship. There is a bit of a disconnect with the school board and the city, and I definitely would like to see that fixed. And I think the first start is by building those relationships again and getting liaisons at both, and maybe changing the meeting format so we can attend both.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey?
Well, let's be clear. There's two school districts that service Ferndale, Hazel Park Schools and Ferndale. Our Northeast residents, kids, all go to Hazel Park Schools. If you live east of the tracks, where I live, you go to Hazel Park Schools. Everybody else goes to Ferndale schools. I'm a graduate of Ferndale High School back in '95, but my mom is a Hazel Park graduate. My nephews and nieces are Hazel Park High School graduates, but we all lived in Ferndale. And so I think to have a discussion or collaboration with a school district, it's school districts. We have to emphasize that more here in Ferndale. People on our northeast side feel disconnected. They feel that they're excluded. They feel, well, you just think we're part of Hazel Park because we're Hazel Park schools. This is what I hear when I walk, and I grew up on the east side. I've been there my whole life, and those are some of the things that we really need to focus on. But to partner with them is we need to establish those relationships. I've already begun doing that. For instance, in the Hazel Park schools, Dr. Krupe, who's the superintendent, I've had in-depth discussions with her regarding issues facing that district. With our newer superintendent here, I haven't had those discussions yet, but I certainly would like to begin the collaboration between city and school districts.
Thank you. This will be the last question prior to the closing remarks. We'll start with Ms. Kelly. What would be your priority with the first 60 days of being elected?
For 60 days of being elected, well, at that time, there's, I guess, two priorities. My one would be to bridge the gap on communication, start building the relationships, start having meetings with our community members, start getting their voices at the table and involved in the decision-making process. And then another big one is going to be our Headley Advisory Board, right? Is going to have to dive right into that, get a clear understanding of where they're at with it and how we're going to move forward to get the best out of that. So that's going to be the first things for sure.
Thank you. Mr. Whitey.
Well, the first thing is in the first 60 days is I want to tour every department. I want to speak to every department head, talk to frontline employees about the inner workings of the department. So many people who run for office don't understand the inner workings of whatever department. For instance, DPW. I'm a former police officer. I don't know much about DPW. Fire department, I know EMS, but I don't know the firefighting side. And so with that, what I would want to do in the first 60 days is orient myself to every department to see exactly what they're working with, what their challenges are, so we can start meeting goals, residential goals with city departments. So that would be in the first 60 days. Beyond that, I would start working on the darn trains. It will not be completed in 60 days, but I want to start nudging our city manager as well as the city council to start moving in that direction so we can get that sooner than later. So that is a big priority for me. And beyond that is my first 60 days is continue to open up the lines of communication for resident input and be available and accessible. My cell phone is on all of my literature. I'm the only candidate doing that. I'm accessible. Call me. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
In my first 60 days, I would be perusing and doing a deep dive into the Financial Review Commission's report and their process and where they're going and their analysis of what the city's going to need vis-a-vis the Headley override. I would be, like Dennis, scheduling meetings with department heads to understand what their current needs and priorities are, sitting down with the city manager, understanding what the sort of hot button issues are of the moment. And then I would be scheduling meetings with our higher level electeds, both in Pontiac and in Lansing, to say, hi, here's who I am and here's what I'm going to be asking for. Here's what we're going to be needing. We're going to be looking for money, so why don't we start getting that in the hopper for the next state budget session? Because the sooner you start, I know this from my day job, the sooner you start asking Lansing for money, the better. It's never too soon to ask Lansing for money, and I will be asking Lansing for money on day one.
Thank you. Now is the time for closing remarks, and we will start with Mr. Whitey.
Well, thank you. First, thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this, City Hall, as well as everybody who attended tonight and those who are going to watch on home or on YouTube reruns later. I appreciate you all paying attention and being informed to make a decision in this election. Let me start by just saying that, first, I always say this, in Ferndale there are no bad people running for office, just people with different ideas. Everybody before you cares about this community, they put their name out there, it's not easy, regardless of where you're coming from. But beyond that, I would like to thank both of my fellow candidates for engaging in this discussion while I was up here. I think what's important is what do you want in a council person? And I think you want somebody who can collaborate, not necessarily fight and be that dissenting vote at all costs, but to collaborate to get certain things with compromise and team building and consensus. I have a proven track record of doing that in this community. I'm currently doing that in my campaign, is to build these consensus so that we can come together. And while not agreeing on everything by any means, come together for the best interest of Ferndale. I ask for your vote on November 7th, Dennis Whitey for council.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Yeah, so thank you all for being here tonight and giving me the opportunity to share my vision for Ferndale. I've had the privilege of serving our community in different capacities over the years. Through my local involvement and political engagement, I've worked hard to build strong relationships with elected officials on the state and national level. With these connections, I will effectively advocate for our community's needs at a higher level of government and help bring valuable resources to Ferndale. Throughout my campaign, I have emphasized my commitment to transparency and connectivity between residents and city leadership. Now is the time to rebuild trust, strengthen our community, and make decisions that benefit all of us. Together, let's create a city where residents feel empowered and included. I humbly ask you to go with Roe when you vote in this election. To learn more about my campaign, please follow my journey at Rolanda Kelly for Council on Instagram, Facebook, or my website. listen, learn, and lead our way back to a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you again to the league and to the city government for letting us use City Hall. I have been involved in this community for 8.5 years. I believe in what Ferndale is, what it stands for. It's not just our home, but it's a place that we believe in. It's a place that shapes who we are and who we want to be. And I want to keep working for that. I want to keep pushing and moving Ferndale forward. I know how to do government. I know how to get things done. But I also know how to talk to people, how to listen, and how to understand what the needs are in the community. It's a fine balance between what we need and what we want, and that's something I do every day in my day job. You've all heard me say it before, but you're going to hear me say it again. Theodore Roosevelt said that far and away, the greatest prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. I have given my life to doing the hard work worth doing here in Ferndale, and I would like to keep doing it for you. Please vote for Donnie Johnson, November 7th or earlier by absentee.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters would like to thank the audience, the candidates, and Corwell TV for making this forum possible. This presentation is copyrighted 2023 by the League of Women Voters. All rights are reserved. Any recordings of this forum can only be shown in its entirety. Rebroadcast times of this forum will be on the League of Women Voters website, lwvoa.org, and on YouTube. The League of Women Voters is funded by contributions from concerned citizens and businesses. Our membership is open to men and women over the age of 16. For mayor, vote for 1. For council, vote for 2. Remember to vote November 7. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you and good night.